Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and man, selling the collection is getting tough. Last night, I decided to bust out a few of my favorite Sega CD games, being Android Assault, Popful Mail, and The Terminator, and it was a blast, really, really and truly. Sometimes playing some of these retro games are just a ton of fun. They transport you right back to the early to mid 90s. When you sit down and you play some of these games and you look at it through the lens, or you look at them through the lens of being, 30 years older, and you try to mentally transport yourself back to 1994 or 1995 or 1993 when these games first came out. And I mean, when you compare them to like the PlayStation 5 and the just the devices that we have today, of course these seem like ancient relics, but back then, man, back then this was like groundbreaking, cutting edge technology. You couldn't tell a kid in 94 that was playing Android Assault that there was going to be anything better than this. You know what I mean? Like, it just the gameplay, the colors, just the vibrancy. It's just an amazing time. I love the 90s, man. I do. I love it. I love the 90s. I love the early 90s. I love everything about the 90s. And just going back and playing some of these games has just been fun. It's been really fun just listening to the music. It's something super nostalgic about it. And it really does make letting go of some of the collection tough. Now, don't get me wrong, there's parts of the collection that I'm a-okay with parting ways with. I really have no real ties to my GameCube collection. I'm okay with letting that go. My PS3 collection, I'm okay with letting that go. Xbox 360, I'm not super tied to that. But like, anything in my collection that's Sega related is a really tough thing to let go, and it's making me reconsider. It's really making me reconsider the direction. Um, and one of the things that I realize as I go through this whole like selling process is how many collectors there still are out there. You know, yeah, you've got a few resellers who will be willing to buy a large collection in bulk, but you start to realize how many like collectors that are lurking in the shadows, the collectors who are not on social media, who don't care about any YouTube hype, who don't care about an algorithm. There are a lot of collectors out there who are buying up all types of stuff, and it's crazy once you start to see what people are actually looking for out there. And it's just really interesting. And the funniest part is that collectors don't mind paying for good stuff. You know, if you're a collector, if and you spot a game that may be on the rarer side, maybe a game that's a little bit more on the expensive side, collectors don't mind paying up for that stuff, especially if it's something that they want to have in their collection and they know that they're not going to find it anywhere else, or let alone find it for 10-15% off. They're not gonna bark at that. And so it's very interesting. This whole process has been super interesting for me, and I know some of you are like, well, Y2K, why are you selling? Like, what, it's life changes, man. Life changes are happening, things are happening, moves are being made, and part of those moves require massive downsizing of the collection, massive downsizing. Um, but if there are games that I can retain, I can tell you right now, the consoles that I'm really leaning towards are really my fourth, fifth, sixth generation stuff. That's the stuff that I'm really like clenched fist on. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, if someone's willing to work out a deal that I think works for me and works for them, ultimately I'm going to make the right decision for my family. But just playing the games, makes it just makes it tough because these are really really fun games. So we'll see we'll see what happens. We'll see where it goes. I've got my own personal timeline of when things are gonna start moving and shaking. But yeah, it's really honestly just been a blast diving back into some of these retro games, and it's also been super interesting to see where the market is at for like those who are still collecting these games, because collectors are still out there. They're definitely looking for deals. They don't want to pay eBay prices. They definitely don't want to pay full price charting. There's very few collectors out there that are going to be willing to spend full price charting money, but it definitely just depends on the game. If it's a game, like I said, that they cannot find, they've been trying to source the game, they've been trying to find the game, and they just can't get their hands on it, then yeah, they'll be willing to come up pretty damn close to, price charting values to be able to get their hands on it. So, some of the games that I have in my collection, I've had them for years, a really long time. And I'm not a some cost fallacy type of guy. I'm not a guy who just hangs on to something because he's had it for 20, 50 years. Whether I've had it for a day or I've had it for a decade, if I really like the game, it's going to be a game that I'm going to want to keep and, have in my collection. But, I think honestly, it really more so just boils down to, how much I like the game, how much I want to play the game, the type of joy it brings me personally. And some of these titles are just really, really great. And the music, man, there's something just so nostalgic about the music, especially when it comes to the Sega CD, because there are so many of these Sega CD games that have like Sega Genesis counterparts. Probably not Android Assault and not Popful Mail, but I'm pretty sure there's a Terminator version, a Genesis version of the Terminator games. And there are games that came out on the Sega CD that are still that are available on the Sega Genesis. Echo the Dolphin, um, you know, uh, Demolition Man. There's a number. Jurassic Park. There's a number of games that came out on the Sega Genesis that also came out on the Sega CD. But the difference is that the Sega CD versions typically had way better soundtracks, just way better sound in general, which makes sense, right? Because it's not a cartridge, it's a CD. They're able to take advantage of the CD quality sound and the CD quality technology. And also, because of the CD factor, they're able to do better full motion video on the Sega CD, whether it's a cartoon format or they're trying to do this horrible, like, during my live stream, somebody asked me if it was like 48p. Hilarious, right? Like the pixelation on some of that full motion video stuff is just terrible. But again, back then, that was like mind blowing. Seeing full motion anything back in the early 90s was just crazy. So, yeah, it's tough. Decisions will need to be made here, but definitely enjoying just kind of diving back into some of these games. Let me know down in the comments, what is some of your favorite fourth generation, fifth generation games, even third generation. Let me know what's your favorite Sega Genesis, your favorite Super Nintendo, Sega CD. Let me know what's some of your favorite games from that era. I'm feeling nostalgic today, and I'll catch you in the next one. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.